Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the lefts, we go after the rights, we go after the middle and independents, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, September 25th, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we do start, guys, let you know that we do pride ourselves on being a news podcast, which means we do our research to the most reputable sites for award-winning journalism and research. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, The Daily Beast, whatever extreme left or extreme right you get your views from. We simply don't do that. We provide you nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language, but let's be honest, words do fly a lot on this show. And at the same time, guys, some things that might be shown that might be too intense or too much for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So we do have some interesting news that did pop up, especially in the last couple of minutes, because this was not on my bingo card of 2024.
We're following some breaking news out of New York. The mayor of America's largest city has been indicted on criminal charges. New York City Mayor Eric Adams was indicted by a federal grand jury today. But what exactly those charges are is not being unveiled. Many of his top advisors, they have been the subject of federal investigations over the last year, from subpoenas to searches. Adams has also come under fire, but has maintained he is not aware of any wrongdoing.
So yes, as you can see there, the mayor in the New York City mayor, Adams, has been indicted by a federal grand jury. There was beforehand investigations and raids into his top aides that have happened over the last week or so. No news on yet what those indicted charges will be. However, it is highly speculated that it could be of bribes and things of that nature. All I can say is, I just think it's kind of fortuitous, and I know the joke's already been said, but did he just start singing and yet we're seeing people drop? I'm not saying it's related. I'm just saying it's kind of aligns a little bit if you think about it. The diddler just taking everybody down. But again, in all seriousness, when more information is released about that, we will definitely talk about it. But moving on, I do have to talk about this guy, Mark Robinson. Before I play this video, viewer discretion is advised. Yes, he actually did this, and I really shouldn't be surprised because we've seen the wave of Republicans that have come out since Trump has run for office. This shouldn't be surprising. It's what he said. It's what he said in said area is surprising. Again, you've been warned.
Positively freaking the heck out. You see, the deadline to withdraw from the state's gubernatorial election is 4 hours from now. The state Republican Party really wants its candidate, Mark Robinson, to drop out. Even by the standards of Donald Trump's handpicked freaks and geeks, Mark Robinson is a uniquely terrible candidate. He's got a open history of rank anti-Semitism, along with a bunch of other bigoted statements. He's made grotesque anti-abortion ads accusing women of not being responsible enough to keep your skirt down. Just 2 weeks ago, he had to deny a report that he was once a 5 nights a week attendee at multiple porn shops where he often brought a pizza into a private booth with him. All that had been a known quantity. Seemed fine with Trump and his party. And yet, this afternoon, we started to hear this chatter that Republicans, including members of the Trump campaign, had suddenly decided it was time for Robinson to go. And then we learned why. Around 3:30 p.m., CNN dropped a report that Robinson made a series of inflammatory comments on a pornography website's message board more than a decade ago, in which he referred to himself as a, quote, black Nazi and expressed support for reinstating slavery. The extensive and thorough report by the excellent reporters at CNN provides overwhelming evidence that Mark Robinson was indeed the one making the comments on the website Nude Africa, including the fact that he signed up for an account using his actual name, Mark Robinson. He used the same username and email address for other accounts on multiple other websites. In the report, Robinson says he wants to own slaves and calls himself a Nazi, wrote that he preferred the former leader of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, over the leadership in Washington during the administration of Barack Obama. I'd take Hitler over any of the expletive that's in Washington right now. Also, Robinson graphically described his own sexual arousal as an adult from the memory of secretly peeping on women in public gym showers as a 14-year-old. Robinson recounted the story as a memory he said he still fantasized about. What's more, Robinson said he enjoyed watching transgender pornography, a review of archived messages found in which he also referred to himself as a, quote, perv. Now, of course, it is our position strongly here on this program. Consenting adults in a free country should be free to produce and consume any kind of pornography should they want to. Transgender pornography obviously included. It does, however, present a stark contrast with what Robinson says now about LGBTQ folks.
There's no reason anybody anywhere in America should be telling any child about transgenderism, homosexuality, any of that filth. And yes, I called it filth.
Does seem to be a bit of a filth expert. In an interview tonight, Robinson denied that any of the messages belonged to him.
This is not us. These are not our words, and this is not anything that is characteristic of me, nor has it ever been.
How do you explain all of the matching details on this profile? The profile on Nude Africa lists your full name as Mark Robinson. The email listed on the account is an email that you have used elsewhere on the internet, including with your photo. You have used that name, Mini Soldier, on multiple social media accounts, including Twitter, Pinterest, Black Planet, and YouTube. How can you deny, with all of these matching details, that this is you?
Look, I'm not going to get into the minutia of how somebody manufactured these salacious tabloid lies.
We should also note that the report uncovered some very specific language used in the posts at issue. Uncommon phrases such as gag a maggot, dunderhead, I don't give a frog's ass, and I don't give two shakes of it. They were used by the account on Nude Africa and by Mark Robinson on his personal Facebook page. Also, according to the report, Robinson spoke admirably about the KKK, implying he would join if the hate group allowed black members, made disparaging remarks about Martin Luther King Jr., calling him a racial slur and an effing commie bastard. Bit more than a bit ironic, considering what Trump likes to say about his good friend Mark Robinson.
I said to this man, and when he endorsed me, he gave a speech, and I said, "You are Dr. Martin Luther King on steroids. That's how good you are. You are unbelievable as a speaker." And he got up and he's doing fantastically well in North Carolina. And I think he's going to be the next governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson.
I don't know if I'd put money on that bet right now. In fact, Donald Trump and his family have said a lot of nice things about the man who called himself a black Nazi and reportedly praised Hitler.
Thanks as well to, I think, one of the hottest politicians in the United States of America, and who's become a friend of mine, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Thank you, Mark.
We have to be very, very careful. We have to cherish Mark. He's a star. You have to cherish him. Amen. It's like a fine wine, because that's what you have. You have a fine wine. He's an outstanding person. I've gotten to know him so well and fairly quickly.
I want to thank a very good man, and he's in there fighting. He's fighting, and we know he's a fighter. The next governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson. Thanks, Mark.
Well, listen, we know them. We know them well. We know Mark very well. Amazing guy. But Mark is a wonderful person, a wonderful guy, a person I've gotten to know very, very well. And I think not only are we going to win the state, I think he's going to win the state.
It now seems as though Donald Trump might be trying to distance himself from the fine wine of a candidate. At least according to the Carolina Journal, citing an anonymous source, Robinson is under pressure from staff and members of the Trump campaign to withdraw from the governor's race. And that earlier this week, leaders in the Trump campaign privately told Robinson he was not welcome at rallies for Trump or vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance. He was slated to speak at the Vance appearance on Wednesday, but his office announced that Robinson had tested positive for COVID. Now, Robinson's pretty far down the polls, while the top of the ticket is locked in a tie in North Carolina. And to be clear, the deadline for Robinson to withdraw is today. He's got less than 4 hours as of now. State law says candidate can pull out of the race up until the day before absentee ballots start to go out for overseas service members. Those ballots go out tomorrow. Robinson's name is already on them. But according to Robinson, doesn't matter anyway because he is not going anywhere.
Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. Clarence Thomas famously once said he was the victim of high-tech lynching. Well, it looks like Mark Robinson is too. We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it. And we know that with your help, we will.
I, for one, feel reassured. Now, let's just take a step back here. Maybe Mark Robinson is the most extreme version of the antisocial MAGA candidate. But is he really that much more extreme than J.D. Vance, who's just spent the last 2 weeks spreading essentially blood libel about Haitian residents of his home state? And what about Donald Trump, who also bragged about peeping on women while they undress, to say nothing of boasting of sexual assault and then getting found liable for sexual abuse by a jury? The guy who broke bread at his home with a man who praised Hitler and an avowed white supremacist. This is the Republican Party under Donald Trump. I gotta say, North Carolina Republicans, I think it's gonna be a little hard to return your candidate now, you know? You broke it, you bought it. Mark Robinson's your guy.
And yeah, that crazy. Not only did this man, and I know I'm gonna hate myself for repeating this. Let's think about this. The guy who is now trying to run for governor of North Carolina. Look, you're consenting adults. You can do whatever, as long as you're not harming anybody, you're not harming people or kids, you could do whatever it is you want to do. Go to a porn store, knock yourself out. Go to a porn store with pizza. Serial killer vibes. But again, as long as you're not hurting anybody and not having children involved, go nuts. However, when you literally admit on certain websites that you call yourself a black Nazi, that you prefer Adolf Hitler to former President Barack Obama, that you say you wish they could bring back slavery and you want to join the KKK if they would have you. Wow. And again, in this day and age, Trump is basically the makeup remover that really caused all this. Because you got to think for a second. A candidate like him, a candidate like Byron Donald, who says that black people did better under Jim Crow than they did now. You would not get idiots like that speaking and thinking they had a shot in office unless it was Trump. And now you see Mark Robinson trying to save, you would think calling yourself a black Nazi, you just might as well just gave up any hope of winning the governorship at that point. But then you double down and say, you speak about your preferences and that you're a perv and that you looked in on women since you were a kid. And you sounded more like a sexual deviant than a person that was actually just admitting their vices. And it is amazing to me that, as they said, he hasn't dropped out. At the time of that actual piece being made, he hasn't dropped out the race. That was 4 hours ago. That 4 hours was long overgone. At the same time, now there's a problem. Now North Carolina Republicans have a problem. You're kind of stuck with him. And again, how can you be stuck with a person that literally and figuratively says all of these things, then turns around and says, well, that wasn't me. That's just somebody basically trying to be me. When the same words and username are being used on your site, your Facebook website, or your Facebook account, and every place else, but someone just decided to go through all this trouble to say things that you've already said yourself. Sir, you're not Shannon Sharp. And even Sharp had to admit, sometimes you just need to own it. Now, if you want to be a degenerate deviant, that's on you. But to be a deviant and then try to run for office, no. Not the fact of what this man has said about abortion, what he said about women not being able to. He said women should not be able to vote. He says that there should be a heartbeat law for abortion. That transgenders are confused, even though he just admitted that's his favorite kind of video vice. The man itself, and I've always said this whenever it comes to Republicans being the family of family values, the party of family values that they call themselves. every time I hear that, I go, every time there's a scandal involving a love child, a mistress, or an LGBTQ plus lover, it always points to Republicans. I swear they hate themselves. It's like being in the closet but forever hating yourself. That's what it sounds like whenever it comes from them. But Trump sitting there calling him Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids. You ought to know off the bat that itself is a contradiction to begin with. But there it goes, Mark Robinson, who still thinks he has a shot. But what's also scary, not just to transition for a little bit, what's also scary is what Trump said. Trump sat there and said, if elected, he would cast himself as the protector of women. As he said, quote unquote, women won't be thinking about abortion if I'm elected. He will cast himself as their protector. Really? I think Trump needs to think about the fact those words are not going to echo the way he thinks they're going to echo. Reason being, this is the same man who admitted to walking in on teens during a beauty queen pageant. He's walked on women during the Miss America pageant. He's already been convicted of sexual assault. He's literally paid a porn star money to sleep with him while his wife Melania was pregnant. At the same time, goes wishy-washy on the idea of abortion, contraceptives, and abortion and Plan B pills. But you want to call yourself a protector. I'm sorry, there's nothing about Donald Trump that screams protection of women, more like exploit of women is what it sounds like. And yet the crazy part is some women actually will believe him. Even though all the evidence would say otherwise, it is amazing how many people still believe him. But again, I digress. He's still holding on to the fact that Haitians have been eating dogs and other animals, even though no evidence out there would suggest it. Although another thing that Trump said that a lot of people should know about, that he sat there and said that he'll help U.S. businesses through tariff and taxes. That alone should be a little bit scary because, again, for all those who don't remember, not too long ago, Donald Trump called himself a tariff man without knowing what the actual tariffs do, because they're not exactly what you think they are. We explained this a few months. We explained this almost last year on the podcast, how tariffs work. Tariffs are basically passing on the cost of doing business to the consumers in just the shortest form ever. You wonder why you're paying more? Because of tariffs. Because again, we are not a great export country. We have become an import country. A lot of manufacturing has moved overseas and therefore has changed the way our actual commerce works. So instead of us exporting things out, we're now buying a lot of things in. What Trump tried to do as an idiotic person was, hey, we're gonna put tariffs on everything from China. Anybody that has a brain cell and can read the back of anything knows that 90% of what we have comes from overseas, mainly China. And yet the prices on these things have went up. So because those prices have went up, that means cost of living has went up. Those same products that we're using, including electronics, things of that nature, those prices went up. And why? Because Trump thought he was doing well, which again, him hiking up tariffs on foreign imports is a dangerous and yet stupid idea, because hiking up tariffs on imports means that every American citizen will be paying more for the basic stuff. Not counting, let's ex-nay clothes, let's ex-nay food. Let's just say your cars, your parts, your electronics, your TVs. Again, all this stuff that we now enjoy, for the most part, components and things of that nature do come from overseas. Manufacturing over there is cheap. They can mass produce in a shorter amount of time than we can do over here in the States. Now, you could argue that, over there, you have to worry about wages or things of that nature, because we've seen with Apple that they had issues with their Chinese warehouses, but they can produce and ship out faster than we can, and been doing so for a number of years. And now Trump wants to turn around and say, we're going to tax those people, not knowing that you're really shooting yourself in the foot and reloading. And then the other thing he wants to, reducing the corporate tax rate. No. I had this argument with people because, again, people don't understand. The corporate tax rate should never be low. The highest it's actually ever been, I think in recorded history, was maybe close to 67%, and that was during the 1920s, 1930s. 67% is a good amount. Where we are currently right now, in a not good place, because right now Trump wants to reduce the corporate tax to 21%. I think we're hovering somewhere between 27 and 28 right now. Even now, the corporate tax rate being at 27, 28% makes those corporations happy. It should be higher. Reason being, and I'll say this all the time, guys, that whenever America's economy has always done well. It's done well because of three things. Number one, you have a high-ass corporate tax rate. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be high. These corporations have money, have means, have areas to do loans they have the securities to do loans and things of that nature. Why did they need a tax break? Their profits mean all they're going to do is fill their coffers. It doesn't, Ronald Reagan trickle-down economics, it doesn't go anywhere. So what have they done? Corporations of rich people, their profits leading to their mass wealth have grown in a pandemic era. So again, the corporate tax rate can be higher. At the same time, the tax breaks that Donald Trump put in need to be removed. Why? They only benefit those rich folks and corporations. Small businesses and people like you and me don't get those tax breaks, and yet we're paying more. Again, when the economy was thriving, tax breaks were given to the middle and lower class, while the upper class paid more because they could afford it, and the corporate tax rate was high because they could afford it. Was the greatest times that our economy actually could say was moving in the right direction. And yet, at the same time, historically, the economy has always thrived under a Democratic administration. Every Republican administration, the economy has literally just took a nosedive. And that's not me not picking the sides. That's history, which should go along to tell you that what Trump wants to do is literally just, batshit crazy. But speaking of batshit crazy, and this is starting to become a thing now, that these kids, these shooters that are going after schools, these kids that are doing death threats, people are not playing anymore. And they're fine doing things. They're fine holding people accountable. People being sometimes the parents, especially with the Georgia father that was now indicted. Now the mother has been indicted.
Mother of the suspect in the deadly Georgia high school shooting has reportedly been indicted on unrelated charges of elder abuse. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, authorities accuse Marcy Gray of taping her elderly mother to a chair, taking her phone, and leaving her there for nearly a day. If convicted, she faces up to 20 years.
Now, I know for a lot of people that's going, well, what does that got to do with the Georgia shooter? I mean, she wasn't there. She wasn't, giving him a gun for Christmas. The point I'm making out of this is it always starts in the home. It always starts. I mean, don't get me wrong. As a gun owner, I do believe in the Second Amendment. I do believe the right to defend your home. I will always agree with that. But I do believe that you should protect children should not be allowed access to firearms. I believe children should not be given firearms. I believe that children should not be trained on how to use firearms. Why? Because that's how you get school shooters. And I'm not saying that's the case for every kid, but let's use a little common sense here. That again, with the Georgia shooter, that had to start in the home. The father had no problem with it. I mean, just last week we played a video where the welfare check was done on the kid. And the father sat there and told the officer, hey, when you talk to him, he's a little, When the father has to say that about his son on a possible welfare check, that should have been red flags from Judge Street. And now the mother, who is now facing elderly abuse, again, another red flag. And I keep saying this all the time, guys, because we had our story here in Nashville where just over 2 weeks ago, a woman decided to, because of what was happening with her child on school bus and that she couldn't get access to her child, decided to brandish a firearm, and she decided to wave it around in the air and as a way of intimidation. And of course, decided to then take off when police were coming. And, here's the thing I say about this for all those that don't know, because this did happen in Nashville. It's one thing. It's one thing to be worried about your child, but we have to think about our actions. especially when, everything these days, we're tired of the school shootings, we're tired of the mass shootings, but you just can't go around and do certain things, or you can't go around and do pranks because they're not. It's no longer a laughing matter, because again, until the gun laws change, or until how we change how we regulate guns, we have to set the example. And in this case, with that Georgia shooter and what happened here in Nashville, it's going to be one of those things that we are definitely going to be watching. But at the same time, it makes no sense to allow certain things that, really shouldn't happen. But speaking of things that shouldn't happen, book banning, because some schools are still banning books. And it's funny that when we look at this, more than 10,000 books were removed from school library shelves over the 23-24 school year, because that's literally, and again, for all those who don't know, these are books based off authors who are LGBTQ plus and people of color. Even right here, a couple of banned books: The Color Purple, The Love, The Hate You Give, The Music of What Happens, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, How It All Blew Up, Mouse, Can I Touch Your Hair, My Hair is a Garden. That's just a number. Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird. That's just a number of the books that are quote unquote banned because of, as they said, the graphic nature, And I always laugh when they say this, because when they want to ban books, you don't want to talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. That's my greatest example. Because people go, I don't like To Kill a Mockingbird, it's racist. Yes, that's the entire point of the book. Or you don't want to read Flowers in the Attic. It's uncomfortable. That's the point of the book. The point of banned books is literally pointless, because what some parents have figured out, especially terrorist groups like Moms for Liberty, they have figured out that you can take our educational system right now, which is basically a shaky ass Jenga stand. Shout out to the educators and public teachers who are doing their best, because Lord knows you are overworked, underpaid, overloaded, and underfunded. But that being said, not only do you have the obligation of making sure the next generation has a decent shot at education, you have to worry about parents who have no educational backing, who literally just go off their own feelings and say, I don't want my child reading this. And by my child not reading this, I believe that your child should not read this. Why? Because I don't think they need to be reading books about from LGBTQ plus authors and from people of color. I'll say this once and I'll say it again. If you don't want your child to read, that's fine. But you don't get to dictate what other children are reading because you're not their parents. And even more so, I've never seen, and there's books out there. Fahrenheit 451 is a great example of what's going on right now. Because out of fear, books, they're not burning books yet, but out of fear in that story, books were burned because of the knowledge. And I've always said it, books open up minds. Not only open up minds, they actually introduce what I call critical thinking. And not honestly to get on my soapbox right now, but in some educational systems, they can't teach critical thinking anymore. Not that teachers don't want to, it's because the school system would rather ensure that kids learn to beat a test instead of learning to think for themselves. And that's missing from a lot of school systems. And you would think banning books should not be a thing. But here we are in 2024, and it's 1984 all over again. And I ask that question all the time to those parents who believe their children should read a book. Why do you not think that your children should not read To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, The Catcher in the Rye? I'm just curious. Because would you rather have them read Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, The Purpose-Driven Life? I'm just saying, because if we're going to start banning books from school libraries, start with the Bible and go from there. Just saying. Moving right along, guys. Unfortunately, another mass shooting has happened. And again, we find ourselves asking the very same question of when is it going to stop?
Mass shooting in Alabama overnight, leaving 4 people dead. The mayor of Birmingham and law enforcement officials giving an update on the manhunt for what they say are multiple gunmen. Officials confirm it was a targeted shooting that killed 4 and injured at least 20 other people, saying the shooters were looking for a specific person. Joining me now is Birmingham Police Chief Scott Thurman. Chief Thurman, thank you so much for taking the time. Let me just say, I'm sorry this happened in your community. Everybody there obviously on edge. Want to know the latest on the investigation if you can.
So our detectives are working with our federal partners to figure out who the responsible parties are to get them in custody and get them out of our city.
This is a scary situation. This is a packed area. We're seeing some video of it there. People out on a Saturday night, crowds of people at restaurants and at bars. How reckless, in your estimation, is what happened last night?
Well, it's extremely reckless. This is one of our entertainment districts. It's an area that we usually have a lot of patrons and citizens come out and enjoy themselves, as you said, in restaurants, bars, nightclubs, things of that nature. And so just very, very distressing, very hurtful that this occurred in our city and occurred in this area and that so many people were injured and several lost their lives.
I know you are obviously not at the hospital, you're not a doctor, but can you tell us anything more about some of the folks who were caught in the crossfire, innocent bystanders, what kind of injuries they suffered?
I don't have that information, other than they were shot, obviously injured from gunfire.
And we had heard that you had told us that there was a switch on this firearm that allows it to fire like an automatic weapon. Can you tell us anything more about that?
So not necessarily was a switch, but we believe that the firearms that were used have been converted to fully automatic. So we're still trying to gather information as to what type of weapon we use. We do have shell casings and some other evidence that we're processing at this point in time.
Okay, and you're still actively looking for multiple shooters right now. You've got the FBI and ATF helping?
Yes, sir.
All right, Chief Thurman, we know it's a tough day. Thank you so much for taking the time.
So what's crazy about this is, as the story develops, I just wonder if it's going to be the same thing all over again. And I don't want to say it, but when they do catch the gunman or gunman, it's going to make me wonder the same thing. How did they get the guns? Because criminals, these are, although they are terrorists, in my opinion, but the last couple of terrorists have got their guns legally or gotten them from a family member or, had red flags, but nobody checked on them. So I can only imagine as that story goes on, how much we're going to find out much more about that. I just hope it's not the same thing. But again, with gun laws coming up, it's hard. I mean, with gun violence on the rise, especially with mass shootings, we keep asking ourselves, what more is it going to take? Because honestly, I thought Sandy Hook was going to be it, but Republicans, this will be your time to shine because you guys are usually backing the NRA and other gun owners, and yet it is amazing to me that whenever gun control comes up, Republicans are always quick to say criminals don't obey laws and walk off. And yet, for y'all to be the biggest supporters, y'all have zero accountability whenever it comes to the idea that we must do more, really and truly. So again, we're going to find out what that story is as it develops. But anyway, moving on to Boeing. Boeing may not be much of a company if they don't get this strike ended. And right now, it ain't looking good for them.
We're going to turn now to the latest on the Boeing strike, the union rejecting the latest offer. Trevor Ault is tracking this for us. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Robin. This is a really big deal. We believe this has already cost Boeing about $500 million, and it's still ongoing. They might be at an impasse. The union for the machinists on strike has rejected Boeing's offer. It includes a 30% raise over 4 years. Boeing calls this its best and final offer, but the union had asked for 40%, and they say this supposed final offer misses the mark. So this strike has halted production on many Boeing jets. It's now on day 11. It's estimated to cost $50 million per day, and who knows when it might end.
Who knows?
Yes.
Who knows? But we do know that there's some news when it comes to the
air traffic
controller shortage.
Absolutely, yeah. It was something we've been reporting on for some time. The FAA had said way back in the spring they were short about 3,000 air traffic controllers, which is a huge number, but they say they've made major progress here and exceeded their hiring goals. They've hired more than 1,800 in 2024 so far. In April, of course, Congress passed a plan to help increase controller pay. That's a big reason behind being able to hire so many more people. But the shortage had been linked to delays and a number of close calls on airport runways. There's still a shortage, but it is much smaller than what it used to be.
Okay.
So with Boeing, because again, Boeing has been in the news for the last couple of months, from literally a door being ripped off mid-flight from the fact that airplanes are failing as FAA inspections to now the machinist union has sat there and said to Boeing, who sat there and said, well, our final offer was 30% raise over the next couple of years. And Boeing said it was their best and final offer. And the machinist said, up yours. Again, I say this all the time whenever it comes to unions. If there's a union in your area, you definitely should join it. It's easier to work with a union because the company is more inclined to listen to you than you trying to negotiate by yourself. And as you can see, Boeing, who has had a record profit year, again, it is amazing to me that these companies that have record profits never share with their employees. Their employees are what makes those record profits possible. And yet they choose not to share it. It's almost as if they're not, again, for a lot of people who just simply want a sustainable wage, who want their piece of that pie, of that profitable pie. That's all people want. I mean, it's not economics 101. It's literally for business. You want your business to thrive, pay your people. It's not that freaking hard, except for the fact that you just have to admit that you're greedy and that you think those people are expendable. That's why I keep saying a union prevents that way of thinking, because trust me, companies that we've covered that have all had strikes have all folded. There wasn't one company that had a strike with a union and one that we talked about. We talked about the nurses union in Houston. We talked about John Deere. We talked about Kellogg. We talked about UPS. We talked about FedEx. All of those companies that went on that had strikes caved into their workers. You think Boeing's going to be any different? Give them time, because when they lost enough money, that's when they'll concede. That's no concede is the word I'm looking for. But it'll be at the cost of a CEO. And let's be honest, for most CEOs, CEO has to be the only job where you can do great and leave a great package, or you can tank the company and still get a great parachute package. Either way, you're covered. And I've never understood that. But we'll figure out what Boeing's going to do, because right now time is money and they are burning through it. But move right along, guys. You guys have probably heard of the drugs, Ozempic and other weight loss drugs are on the rise right now. Well, like most drugs, their prices are a little concerning.
The drugs Ozempic for diabetes and Wegovy for weight loss have created a revolution in healthcare. At a Senate hearing today, Lars Jorgensen, the CEO of Novo Nordisk, the Danish company that makes the drugs, was grilled.
Stop ripping us off.
Senator Bernie Sanders pointing out that the list price for these drugs is much higher in the U.S. than in other countries. Look at the difference in Ozempic in Germany or Wegovy in Denmark.
The outrageously high price of these drugs could bankrupt Medicare and radically increase premiums to absolutely unaffordable rates.
And that could mean people who need what may be life-saving drugs may not get them.
Is this acceptable to you?
Senator, any prospects of patients not getting access to the medicine they need, I think is terrifying. We don't decide the price for patients. That's set by the insurance companies.
Jorgensen argues the pricing system in the U.S. is mostly to blame, specifically pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, that wield enormous power over access to drugs and the prices patients pay, according to a recent study by the FTC, which says these powerful middlemen may be profiting by inflating drug costs and squeezing Main Street pharmacies.
We shouldn't let up on having Mr. Jorgensen and other CEOs here and pressing him, but we got to get serious about the PBM reform.
Senator Sanders announcing 3 of the largest PBMs say they are willing to expand access to the drugs if the company lowered its prices.
Sit in a room with us and work on an agreement?
I'll be happy to, as I said, do anything that helps patients.
While some on the panel took note of the company's achievement.
Novo Nordisk is not the villain in this story. They're a hero. We should be here celebrating this miracle innovation.
The hearing ended without a commitment from Novo Nordisk to lower prices.
Stephanie joining me now. What could the results be if the PBMs and Novo Nordisk do come to the table?
Well, Lester, the largest PBM in the country is CVS Caremark, and they shared with NBC the letter they sent to Senator Sanders that assures a price drop would lead to expanded coverage and expanded access. Now the pressure is on Novo Nordisk to drop that price.
All right, Steph.
Okay. So for a lot of y'all that are wondering out there, because again, for PBMs or pharmacy benefit managers, let's provide for providers, I should say, for provider benefit managers. PBMs are basically like Cigna, Humana, CVS Caremark, people that provide those insurances and coverage and prescriptions out there for people to enjoy. A lot of people use them, right? Now, when you look at Novo Nordisk, who actually does Ozempic, it's amazing to me that when it comes to drug companies and insurance companies, they love this finger pointing thing. Oh, we don't set the prices. They do. PBMs, or I should say, or CVS Caremark, keep it short, is pointing back at them like, we don't set the prices. You guys do. So as the consumer, because a lot of people depend on prescriptions, whether it's life-saving medication like for diabetes or for blood clots, heart complications, you name it. If it's life-saving and you need it, you're basically in between these two juggernauts because they basically don't want to admit the one thing that we all already know. They never want to agree with lowering the prices. Number one, the U.S. is a closed drug market. Closed. What I mean by that is they only do certain companies. Certain companies in certain countries are allowed to actually sell, or I should say, produce or have their drugs in the U.S. Now, it's not as open as, say, Canada or Mexico or Germany or the UK or, I can keep going down the list. Those other companies outside us are open drug markets, which means that you can get the same drug from various other companies. The prices are extremely lower than what you would pay in the US. Now, why am I saying that? I am saying that because currently in our healthcare system in the US, again, like I said, it's a closed market. The corporation, the long and short of this is the PBMs, along with the drug manufacturers, decide the price. They just want to point fingers because it's a lot easier to point blame than hold accountability. Whereas you see Novo Nordisk saying, oh no, we didn't, it's not us, the PBMs decide the price. Okay, so let's just do a little experiment here in common sense. If Novo Nordisk was selling Ozempic through CVS Caremark, and by that CEO's admission, he says that the PBMs control the price. So if CVS Caremark turned around tomorrow and said, for all those that are using Ozempic, instead of you guys paying $300 to $400 a shot, you'll now pay $5 to $10 a shot. Now, if that was said, I guarantee Novo Nordisk would pull Ozempic from CVS Caremark. Why? Because they're not making any money. And that's the killer part. The killer part that Novo Nordisk CEO is not saying. We're not going to make our profit margins because in this country, we can sell high to you and it's legal. And CVS Caremark will still get their piece of the pie because the price is high. But we'll keep pointing fingers at each other because it gives you some sort of closure, which I hate. I hate the fact that we're not on a single payer system. I do believe we'll get there eventually, but we should be on a single payer system. We should, at this point, literally and figuratively, for life-saving medication should be free. Should be. You need it to live. If you have heart condition issues, or diabetes. We just, like I said, not so long ago, we covered the fact that there was a shortage of insulin for insulin medicine for diabetics. That some diabetics, depending on their situations, the fact that the price skyrocketed, had to ration their insulin. A dangerous thing that should never be done. So imagine if we actually did turn around and sit there and say, you know what? Maybe life-saving medication should be free, and the cost should be lowered. And maybe we should open up the U.S. to other drug markets. But then you would have the PBMs crying foul, saying we won't be able to maintain our profit. I mean, we won't be able to compete. And that's the whole idea of business. The thing they don't want to say is when it comes to healthcare in this country, healthcare is a for-profit business. And that is the effing problem. But moving right along, guys, again, another trigger warning, especially for a lot of questions that we're about to ask about what happened in Gettysburg College regarding what a student did to another student. And again, you've been warned.
Tonight, we're starting to learn some more about the investigation into a racial slur apparently being carved into a Gettysburg College student's body. And we're hearing they were teammates. CBS 21's Andrew Klein is there at the school today with the very latest. Andrew.
Well, Joel D., according to the parents of the victim, they gave a statement to the Gettysburg, and that's the school newspaper for Gettysburg College. They said that a racial slur, the N-word, was scratched into their son with a box cutter by one of his teammates on the swim team. Now, the alleged perpetrator has been kicked out of school, according to the Gettysburgian, and the family in that statement with the college went out and said, 2 weeks ago, on the evening of Friday, September 6th, our son became the victim of a hate crime. The incident took place at a gathering of swim team members. It is important to note that he was the only person of color at this gathering. This student used a box cutter to etch the N-word across his chest. Now, that alleged carving, happened on Friday, September 6th, and nothing came out about the situation until last week. Since this happened, students say on campus that the university has responded well.
I would say we're more united now. I think everyone was pretty disgusted about what happened. And I think now we're just trying to move forward, united as one.
I also spoke with the Gettysburg police, who said they have not even received any information, so they did not want to make a comment at this time. Joel D., back.
Okay. So, okay. So a student decided to carve the N-word into a black student, into another black student, supposedly his teammate on the swim team, carved the N-word or attempted to carve the N-word into said student's chest. And said student has been kicked out of school, but I'm not hearing the words arrest, hate crime, and why is he not in jail? Although the Gettysburg police, well, we didn't receive a report. A student was assaulted, maimed, and yet said student who did it, who for the life of me should have his name or their name posted everywhere. There should be some national attention on this because, again, if you carve the N-word into somebody's chest, I know I did it. It's on national news tomorrow. My name will be plastered before my picture is out. And yet this student at this school, nobody knows, hasn't been arrested. And all I can sit there and say is, how in the blue hell is this possible? How? Because again, you're not going to stand and tell me that this individual was allowed to go home. What about the person that this happened to? That's a hate crime. And I don't know what it is about proving when it comes to a black person. Proving when it comes to a black person, why is it so hard to prove a hate crime for a black person than any other ethnic group out there? Especially when this case, like this individual felt comfortable enough to carve the N-word into somebody's chest, and he did it from a place of safety because nobody knows his name except the school. The school did not engage with the police. And you have idiots like that other person, well, we're more united and we're moving forward. No, there's no sweeping this under the rug. there needs to be accountability. There needs to be an arrest. And honestly, if I was the parents of that student that happened to, I am suing everybody. The Gettysburg, the police department, the Gettysburg administration for that college. I'm suing everybody because why that individual is not in jail and is with his folks is amazing to me. While the other student has to recover from the fact that a hate crime has happened to him, and yet everybody seems to be fine about it. But understand that story is not the end. We're definitely going to keep up with that as that develops. But other things that need to be developing, guys, we got to talk about this because here's the reason why how the Frack We got started, which would have now been about 4 years ago, give or take. The reason why we started this, guys, was the fact that we wanted to battle misinformation because it is so easy. Honestly, guys, it is so easy for someone to say something, and if it's unchecked, it catches like wildfire. Here, ergo, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. You know, the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, where there was no evidence to prove otherwise. But the lie kept getting repeated. In the same sense, with Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, I did not expect this person, again, a person who I adore and love and will still love as an artist, but said person is now understanding the reason of don't say something that you're not very sure of, or just because you heard it, that it makes sense. You should be able to speak from a point of certainty, not speculation.
Okay, let's talk about Janet Jackson's escapade. And no, not the song. When the singer was asked about the prospect of America electing a Black woman president, she said of Harris, quote, well, you know what they supposedly said? She's not Black. That's what I heard, that she's Indian. Her father's white. That's what I was told. I was told that they discovered her father was white. Yeah, that's not true. But those words do echo Trump saying that Harris magically turned Black. And yet it gets worse. When Jackson was later pressed whether she thinks America is prepared to see Harris in office, she said, I think either way it goes is going to be mayhem. Either way. Jackson's comments generated outrage online until a credited producer on her upcoming documentary walked it back. Before that person was seemingly fired, leaving it unclear whether Ms. Jackson still believes that Kamala Harris isn't Black and really is willing to tell her billions of fans that there's no difference between Harris and Trump. It's a weird sequence of events, but Jackson is not alone. There's a host of celebrities who have made bizarre comments in actual support of Trump, who has long depended on endorsements from celebrities and Manoverse influencers, mostly because reputable experts and political figures have largely abandoned him. Still, the reality is that all campaigns want celebrity endorsements. Analysis from Harvard University's Ash Center shows it works. And it's, quote, incredibly powerful when centered around calls to action like registering voters or poll worker signups. And it is worth noting for those counting, when it comes to celebrities, VP Harris has a massive list. And it's really a list, up to and including Oprah, who might be the biggest endorsement get of all. Trump, on the other hand, has a C list, although he does have the parents of some A-listers to keep Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock company. Joining me now is Alencia Johnson, former senior advisor to the 2020 Biden-Harris campaign and author of Flip the Script, the Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. I love that idea. I love that book idea. Alencia, thanks for being here. Let's start with, I want to go back to Janet Jackson because I originally didn't want to really do this story because I'm really not trying to embarrass Janet Jackson. I'm a big fan of hers. I grew up listening to her, but I think about the power of her. I was just at Essence Fest this year. She performed. Her fan base is massively Black women. Black women all around the world are her core base. And if she is this subject to misinformation and disinformation, I feel like she actually does have the power to spread that disinformation and misinformation. And that winds up disempowering Black voters, Black women voters in particular. What do you make of it?
Well, look, we know that disinformation and misinformation spreads rampant in Black communities, and the way in which we engage them is actually through a lot of culture mechanisms. Not everybody is, well, I like to think everybody's watching us, Joy, but a lot of people aren't watching cable news in the way that we think they are to get some of their political messaging. And as you mentioned, Janet Jackson has a huge fan base. Look, I was a Janet Jackson fan before I was a Beyonce Beehive member, right? She also has talked about racism and sexism and discrimination in her music. I mean, all of the Jacksons have, right? And so I think it is great for us to talk about it because people are a little bit disappointed. And this is an example of, to your point, how fast this information spreads rampant and how it's so important for us to combat it everywhere, especially in the digital space where pop culture and entertainment spreads a lot faster than truth and news.
Yeah, and the thing is that these celebrities, they have a power, and we were talking about this on the call earlier, is what is the power of celebrities? Like, how do campaigns really use them? And my take just from the campaign side is they don't necessarily make somebody who didn't want to vote for candidate A vote for them, but they can make someone who is open to it register actually, or sign up to vote, or go out and early vote, or just commit, right? They can get people to commit. But when they're actually just being messengers on like politics and policy, let me just let you listen to what John Legend had to say about that.
I think fans and audiences should be careful about wanting us to weigh in on everything, because honestly, like, no, the depth and the breadth of understanding necessary to contribute meaningfully to the conversation is actually like just not there for most artists. And you can't really blame them. This is not what they do every day. You know, like, they're musicians, they're actors, they're in the public eye, and you want them to use that platform for good, but also you want them to do it with a sense of understanding and knowledge and wisdom and connection to activists and organizers and experts. And everybody's just not able to do that.
Alencia, you're actually teaching a course on this. How do we get that balance right in politics?
Yeah, look, my first actual political job was doing surrogate communications work for Obama's reelection campaign, working with a lot of celebrities to refine their messaging. Because what we find is that oftentimes it's not the message, it's the messenger that will, to your point, get voters from the couch to the ballot box, or get people who are going to vote to actually start organizing and mobilizing. And I agree somewhat with what John Legend has said. And what I have found in working with the entertainment industry and a lot of my jobs is that celebrities, yes, they're artists, but they are also people first, right? There are issues that they care about, whether it's reproductive rights, racial justice, and a lot of times, particularly marginalized voices, will use their art as a form of protest and amplifying the message. If we look at last year, Hip Hop 50, hip hop was birthed out of a protest movement, from Fight the Power to F the Police to UNITY to all of the things that Meg Thee Stallion and Lotto have said about these abortion restrictions. They are using their art as a form of not only protest and education, but galvanizing. And the other thing I'll say too, Taylor Swift endorsed the night of the debate. Well, Vote.org saw almost 30,000 voter registrations within 24 hours of that endorsement.
Yeah.
That is the power of celebrity. So they're not helping people decide on who they're going to vote for. They're helping people decide that they are actually going to vote.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there's the risk in it too. I mean, Nikki Jam getting said about him, she's hot by Donald Trump is like, and he's now getting like just pilloried by his fans. But meanwhile, on the Democratic side, they're like waiting on Bad Bunny. They're like, come through Bad Bunny, because it can really help us with Latino voters. So everybody wants the celebrities, and they do help in certain ways. Alencia Johnson, thank you so much.
So the long and short of it is, and this is, first off, again, I love Miss Jackson. I do. Still a fan. But when you start off with something, well, I heard or I understand she's not Black because her father is this. And I said this on a Facebook post, and I mean this wholeheartedly, that the simple fact of the matter is, guys, is just that you just can't go off hearsay. Just like on this podcast, everything that we talk about is backed up by facts and by research. And by research means we can cite it. Now, the reason I don't understand the whole hang up on Madam Vice President. Well, she's not Black because her father is this and this. What is this, the Barack Obama all over again? That all Trump had to say was, because Trump just went back to his playbook. I'm just saying, I don't know if Barack Obama's an American. I would like to see the birth certificate. Keep in mind, he was basically learning that even when he wasn't running for office, at the time that Barack Obama was running for office, that he could still influence Fox News and Republicans to sit there and say, well, yes, we would love to see the birth certificate because we don't know if he's really an American. He could be a Muslim Kenyan for all we know. Again, from Fox News. Misinformation like that can spread. Even more so from celebrities. Because in the words of Kurt Cobain from Teen Spirit, and we're all just entertainers, and we're stupid, and we're contagious. Ergo, how many people sat there and said, oh, Kamala Harris isn't black? Where'd you hear that from? Oh, I heard that from my favorite comedian, my favorite celebrity, my favorite singer. Where'd they hear that from? I don't know. So you're just continually spreading misinformation. And again, spreading misinformation, especially that when it's our duty, whenever you're speaking, speak on fact. Stand on business, as they say. But in this case, Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry, it's hard to, not everybody is held accountable. She does deserve, I'm like, no offense, Ms. Jackson, you do deserve the hell you're going through right now. Because a lot of people are sitting there saying, you should have double checked. You should have double checked. Even more so, made yourself an ally. Spoke on the fact that this woman is speaking on women's rights. Spoke on the fact that you're telling people to go vote or you're registered to vote. Use that platform to bring others to it instead of spreading misinformation. In the same sense, where you see others, again, like Charleston White, I would never vote for Kamala Harris. Well, Negro, we didn't actually ask for your opinion, and yet somehow you're still on social media. But the whole idea with celebrities are contagious. What they say has influence. What they do has influence. And so Ms. Jackson's learned a very hard lesson. Please don't repeat things that you're not 100% sure of. Just saying. But aside from that, guys, before as we get to our last story, because we did keep that last, we did keep the story last for a reason. Just because the name Marcellus Williams should definitely be as a tale whenever it comes to the death penalty and Missouri and Texas and Mississippi and all those good old boy states. If you don't know this story, I'll let Ms. Reed tell it.
Project has confirmed that just in the last hour, Marcellus Williams was executed by the state of Missouri for his conviction in a 1998 murder that he insisted he did not commit. It comes despite strong opposition, including from a top St. Louis prosecutor, as well as the family of the woman Willis was accused of killing, who said he should serve a life sentence instead of the death penalty. And as several questions still surround the case that brought his conviction. Williams' attorneys claim that the prosecution mishandled the murder weapon and had improperly struck prospective jurors because they were Black. But yesterday, Missouri Supreme Court and governor ultimately refused to intervene. And tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected 2 appeals to spare Williams' life over the objection of the liberal justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor. Williams is the 3rd inmate executed in Missouri and the 15th in this country this year. He was 55 years old. He will never be older because Missouri is a state and we are a country that maintains a system of official killing without mercy, even amidst evidence of innocence.
So yes, Marcellus Williams, unfortunately, execution did go through, and as of yesterday, as of this early this morning, he was actually executed. Again, this comes from a spot to where prosecutors had sat there and said that he was innocent, that the evidence in this case was mishandled. You had so many unknowns, and yet the Attorney General and the governor and the Supreme Court all sat there and said, no, sorry, we're moving forward. Now, don't get me wrong about the death penalty. I will say this about the death penalty. The death penalty is the highest, is the most extreme punishment that we have. Is it needed? Yeah. In some cases, yes. I will say for the most heinous crimes, yes. But because the death penalty is that last, like, you got to do something so heinous to where your life is forfeit. Whoever we give the death penalty to, we have to make damn sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that all evidence points to this said person and convict them guilty. Because how many people right now are sitting on death row who might be like Mr. Marcellus, who might be like him, and in his case, may be completely innocent. And this is the thing that kills me about those prosecutions, about those prosecutors, those courts, those judges. Because again, when you have that many irregularities in the case, that there should be a level of, we need to re-examine everything before we move forward with this man's execution. But even more so, the Attorney General has had a history, and I do mean a history, of, well, fighting overturning convictions more than less looking into them.
On Attorney General Bailey and his role in other cases. Chris Dunn served more than 30 years for a murder conviction in St. Louis before key witnesses recanted. A judge ruled this year he should be released immediately, but Bailey's office blocked that too, saying the witnesses' reversals were coerced. The state's high court stepped in and Dunn was released a week later. Bailey also opposed the release of Sandra Hemme, who served 40 years in prison for a murder even after a judge overturned her conviction. Bailey's office argued she should serve additional time for a previous violent conviction.
For decades, attorneys general of this state have always taken the position that the conviction and sentence and appeal are over. The case is final, and it's their job to protect finality.
Michael Wolff is the former Chief Justice of the Missouri Supreme Court. He worked directly on the Williams case.
The ethical standards of our profession say that the prosecutor's job is not just to secure a conviction, but to see that justice is done.
In a statement, Bailey's office says, in part, too often people forget about all of the evidence that was used to convict the defendant. We review each case on a case-by-case basis. Dunn, in an interview alongside his wife, tells us he and others like him have a hard time moving forward.
Don't ever say that it can't happen to you, because just as it done to me, it can happen to anyone.
Stephen Roma, NBC News.
And he's right. That man's absolutely right. I mean, but again, it does say a lot about the state prosecution. It does say a lot that when it comes down to it, why in the blue, if you convicted him beyond a shadow of a doubt, stand on your work. Because they always say it's always interesting where you hear from the attorney generals, well, people don't know about all the evidence that we go through. Okay. Part of your job that empowers you is that when called upon, can you show beyond a shadow of a doubt why this person is guilty? Can you show beyond a shadow of a doubt? And it's amazing where he, this same attorney general who didn't want to help Marcellus Williams, who was literally fighting two other ones that people had to go over him to get the releases, that he and his office will sit there and say, well, no, they should have served more time, or no, they should have got the death penalty. This is why I sit there and say, and I know I'm just pointing out Mississippi as a state, but it could happen anywhere. Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. I know not just necessarily the South, but still, when we are putting people on death row, we have to make sure beyond a shadow of a doubt, and when called upon to prove said evidence is the reason why this conviction needs to happen, they should be able to do so. That's their job as a prosecutor. The fact that he just simply brushing it off and saying, we did our job once, we're not going to do it again, screams to me that a person that should never be in office, especially when it comes to that level of scrutiny, because an innocent man was just executed, and yet they'll sit there and say justice has been done. Like I'm saying, it's fracked up. But again, this is why we vote. But we're going to go move on to our feel-good segment, guys, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually talk about doom and gloom. Sometimes make use of faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday. We will leave guys out some good vibrations. And I keep on saying, if kids are amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a father myself. But just kids, when they put their minds to something, or they get hooked onto something that just excites them, there's just pure joy in when they do, and when they talk about it or do something. And this one young man not only loves science, but loves to teach other people about science.
No, that mushrooms are actually a fungus. But what do you think would happen if we damaged one of these areas? When I was 2, I started being really curious, and of course that drew me to science, because science is like 99% curiosity. When I was 4, I was like, Mommy, I've learned so much and I want to share my knowledge with the world. We started with YouTube, then graduated to Instagram, and then now we're on Facebook and TikTok. This is the most important meal of the day. And you know why? Because when you eat food, you get nutrients. And the nutrients get processed into energy by your cells, and guess what? That gives you energy to start your day. I have a presentation on the immune system.
I feel overwhelmed because we started this with a passion. He wanted to teach. Our intention wasn't to go viral and go all over the place, but he wanted to teach the whole world. And then the whole world came to see the good works that he was doing. And as parents, that really gives us a lot of joy, because first of all, he's fulfilling his mission, and then also he's educating the world.
Science isn't some boring textbook subject with all the math, business. It's fun, and it's all around you. Like, see, even just dropping this pencil, I applied like 3 million science principles.
My message to other parents is that we pay more attention to our kids, because they start demonstrating these giftings at a very young age. So pay attention to them. And then as soon as you identify that this child of mine likes this, you as a parent do whatever you can to support that child, to bring that, nurture that giftings that a child has.
One more tip of advice: don't forget to keep on sciencing.
I don't care what nobody says. That's freaking adorable. But yes, that is Sean the Science Kid. Again, 10 years old. 10 years old, man, and just teaching something, just teaching what he loves. I think he might be a future educator. Again, shout out to educators and teachers. You guys make the world go round. But just in case you're wondering, yes, his YouTube page, Learning with Sean the Science Kid. So if you guys do want to check it out, it's basically there on YouTube. Again, I just love to actually see when kids flourish in their element, and he definitely is with his. But again, just you love to see it. But that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Before we do get out of here, some shameless plugging, guys. Please check out alwayspressrecord.com, APR TV, because not only is our show on their network, but also other shows as well. They also can be, you can see them on the net, as well as through the Roku device and other smart TV devices and other devices when available. APR TV, definitely check them out. Also, blurredstation.com. I cannot stress this enough, guys. I keep talking about the fact that networks like Tubi, networks like Fox News, these areas love our viewership. Our viewership has built those networks. Tubi is now a $100 million network. It used to be the cricket of networks, if you want to be honest. But because of our viewership, because of our patronage, it is now up there. And the messed up part about Tubi, it's owned by the same person that does Fox. That should tell you everything you want to know. But Blurred Station is made for us, built for us, for content by us to join in love and, again, to enjoy. If you do want to check out blurredstation.com, go ahead and do so. Hit the join now button if you do want to join. It is $10.99 a month. Please select the Blurred's Eye View Offending membership and my name, Black Spartan. I would certainly appreciate that. Again, it's content there, guys. Plenty of content, television shows, movies, mangas, you name it. If you are a content creator and would love to have your content on blurredstation.com, you must first join as a member. And then from there, you'll be able to speak to people behind the curtain. If all works out, then your content will be on Blurred Station as well. But definitely check it out, guys, because, again, this is the table, the vehicle that we all asked for. And I would love to see our dollars go to us instead of Fox News. Just saying. Also, vote.org. I keep talking about this all the time, guys, with our show, is that we are 40 days away from our election. Now, again, I keep saying this all the time. If voting was not important, they would not be trying to move the goalposts. Again, guys, please check your registration. If you're not registered, register to vote. It takes less than 2 minutes. At the same time, guys, you'll get all the information that you will need from here, where to go, what to bring, what to do. Not only this website is very effective, it can also help others get registered as well, because we've talked about previously in the show that certain states are doing voter purging, which means that your registration could be gone. And we also talk about early voting. If you can do early voting, go ahead and do it. But at the same time, guys, let's remove the excuses. Vote.org is where you can go, guys, to basically check on everything, not only for you to be prepared, but for everybody to be prepared, because we all have a duty come November 5th. And I don't know about you guys, I do not want to see a second act of the felon, because the second act is going to be much, much worse. But as for myself, Black_Spartan 615 is where you can find me on the interwebs. Pretty much, guys, we talk about more than just current events. The only rule I have is just don't be weird. I don't want to block people, and I don't want to have to start, knocking folks off, because I do believe in conversation. I do believe in the exchange of ideas, and I do believe you can conversate without being a dick. That's all I ask. The link at the bottom, guys, I'll make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you'll copy and paste that link into your browser, take my link tree, that's YouTube and Facebook groups for all the podcasts. Like, share, and subscribe. As a friend of mine once said, like, share, and a follow costs nothing but means everything. At the same time, guys, like the YouTube channel, like the Facebook group, because again, this simply cannot be done without you. As our mission here at How the Frack We Got Here is to basically beat the misdirection, give you all the facts, and do so with the trust that you understand that we're definitely doing our research here. We're not News Media, Newsmax, or all those other crazy indentations Fox News. That's the only way I can put that. But again, guys, please register to vote. At the same time, honestly, I know I need a feel-good moment, but I still gotta say this. If you have the ability to make somebody happy today, do it. The world could use more of that. But last thing about the Frack We Got Here, guys, all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all information that you'll need. At the same time, providing a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society when we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past. We're making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman Federal Board of Governors, and hopefully down the road, electing our first Black woman as the first, second Black person, but first Black woman of these here United States as Madam President. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up by your paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we will get through this. Peace.